All right. Welcome
Hey,
to the first episode of
man.
Domestic Draft Podcast of 2025. Dan, it's good to be back on the air and great to see you. You came into Chicago for a couple weeks there, it seemed like. Was it a couple weeks? Might have just been a week, but
Just shy of two.
yeah, good to see you and good to see your face again today. Why don't you kick it off? What are you drinking?
Yeah, it was good seeing you too. Got to go to a Bulls game, see the UC while I was home. It was a good visit. Had a lot of fun, friends and family. But back to the show, back to the important things. I'm drinking a beer from Epic Brewing. Epic Brewing was a brewery that we had on right in the beginning when we started this podcast. It was one of our first breweries that we had on. It's a really old brewery from Brooklyn from like the 1800s, but they revived it in 2016 in San Diego. The family did, along with some business partners. So I don't want to go on the whole history, but yeah, it was originally in like Brooklyn in the 1800s. The name is the same, Epic Brewing. They revived it in 2016 here in San Diego. They're known for their lagers, pilsners, and other kind of clean drinking styles. I'm drinking their Kolsch, which kind of goes aligned with those kind of styles of beer. It's got a 3.7 on Untapped. It is very good. It's very light, crisp, refreshing. I don't usually go for a Kolsch if I see it on a menu, if I see it on a tap list. It's never usually a style I go for. I was feeling something light tonight, though, and went ahead and saw that. The thing that got me is on the back, kind of just a little bit about the beer. It says extremely sessionable Kolsch style ale that is light-bodied, refreshing, easy to drink anytime, which is usually what a Kolsch is. But here's where it got me, right? It's got sweet Pilsner malts, pear, and a hint of German noble hops to the finish. So that little kind of homage to kind of the Bavarian style brewing, the German style beers always gets me. So I went with it, and it's really good. I like it. It's got a good bold flavor. I usually think Kolsch's are a little more watered down, not my speed, but I like this one. And then back to the brewery, since we had them on, they expanded. There was tasting rooms in Vista here, East Village, La Jolla. But in 2023, they closed all three of those locations.
No way.
So they kind of closed down. I think they were spreading a little too fast. And they closed it down, and they also transitioned management. So they changed the management partnership to a Newport-based West Coast Venture and Resources is the name of the new management. So they kind of are allowing somebody else to come in, manage them, close down some locations, and kind of, I think they're like reassessing how they're going to go ahead and expand. But, it said that they're still, valuing great beer, and they're looking forward to the future of kind of Epic and where they're going to go. So I think they're reassessing, but they want to distribute a little further. So maybe they'll make it out your way. What about you, man?
Yeah.
What are you drinking?
Well, it's great to hear that they didn't completely shut everything down because Epic makes
Which
great
a lot
beer.
of people are, man. A lot of doors are closing.
For sure. The craft beer industry has just been hit pretty hard, and just alcohol consumption, I think in general, has been pretty down the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting kind of segue into this beer, which is Garage Beer. It's a beer I'm doing today. You may have heard of it, but I couldn't find it really at any stores. I happened across it in a Trader Joe's. It's my first time in a Trader Joe's in a while, and I went over there, and which, by the way, at Trader Joe's, you can buy just one beer. You can just open up a package and buy one beer out of there. You can't do that anywhere else. I think that's really interesting. You can build your own little 6-pack there with whatever you want. But I found the Garage Beer, and I've been itching to try this because you might have seen, Jason Kelsey's face is everywhere, but he's promoting this beer, Garage Beer. So Garage Beer, originally brewed by Braxton Brewing Company in Covington, Ohio, just outside of Cincinnati, which is where football players Travis and Jason Kelsey went to school. So they went to college there, drank this, and then fast forward to June of 2024, they now are the largest investors in Garage Beer. They purchased a significant stake in it, and they're promoting it all over the place. So originally brewed, like I said, in Covington at Braxton, they still brew the Garage Beer there, but they've expanded the production to, which is also interesting. They didn't just build another huge production facility. They have like contract brewing with Founders Brewing Company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They brew with Brewdog, which is out of Ohio as well. And then City Brewing in Irwindale, California, also contributes to the production as well. So they're kind of pumping it out in all these different spots throughout the country and then distributing it because you can buy it, I would think, virtually, anywhere, if you can find it at Trader Joe's or what have you. But I think it's really good. It's brewed in small batches, but it's like drinking a Miller Lite or a Bud Light, 95 calories, it's 4%. It gives a 3.43 on Untapped. I wouldn't expect like a huge score out of a light beer like this, but I think it's really good. Pulled it out of my garage for the show. I had to do it for my boy Travis Kelsey, won me a fantasy championship as well. I'm going to shout out Travis.
I was going to say,
my
I
fantasy
think
championship. There.
that beer is going to be, what do you think? Super Bowl commercial? They'll have one, right? That's going to be
yeah.
all over the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I would expect. I mean, you're already seeing the Kelsey brothers in every single commercial during football games anyway. So, but I don't know, Dan. There's going to be a lot of changes for the Bears, come next year. They finally got a win against the Packers, though. We should talk about that before we get into the offseason and what that's going to look like for the Bears. But that was a huge game. I mean, okay, Jordan Love got hurt. Fine, whatever. Did this game mean that much to the Packers? Who cares? The Bears got a win, and that's all that matters. It had been 5 years, I think. I mean, a couple thousand days before they had, the last time they beat the Packers. So it's good to see. Caleb looked pretty good. Game-winning drive. I mean, that guy just seems like he's clutch in those moments. And, I haven't seen that from a Bears quarterback maybe ever, when you need 3 points, somebody that can drive it down like that. So that was great to see. And I think finish it on a strong note. You go into the offseason, still a lot of questions. But, let me hear your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, I'm not celebrating it. I mean, it's always good to beat
Green
Bay.
Come on.
It's always good to beat Green Bay, but I mean, it's just that's what we do. We just sell it like that. Like, that was the Bears Super Bowl. Like they're taunting the fans. And it's good. It's good to win. It's good to be 1-0 in 2025. But it was also a disaster of a season. Probably the worst case scenario of a season that we could have had. Like, let's not lose sight of that. But also, you can't dwell on it. So I kind of get where you're like, okay, turn the page. You beat the Packers. You're going to the offseason. Let's just keep moving forward. That's good. It's good. I get momentum. That. It's momentum. Yeah. I do agree with you, though, that I think Caleb Williams does have that it factor, I guess you can say, when the game is on the line. He's done this a couple times already in his rookie season where he might not have had a good game at all. He's missed a lot of kind of wide open receivers. The inaccuracy is a problem. But when it comes time to make plays and you as a fan are holding your breath, hoping that, your quarterback can do something special, he's done it. He's led a couple not game-winning drives because we had field goal blocked and time management mishaps, but he's led a lot of late-game drives where he put the Bears in position to win as a rookie quarterback. So, yes, I think that's great. Beating Green Bay is always great, but I'm not getting too high and celebrating it. It's still a franchise owned by the McCaskies. It's still a franchise who hasn't won a Super Bowl since 1985, before we were born. And it's the same kind of rhetoric we've been hearing when they speak at the end of losing seasons, that the fans deserve a product out there. We're going to do everything right in our ability to get this thing right. We have one of the most important decisions we have to make, and we need to get this head coach correct. We need to get the right person in there for the next 10 to 15 years to lead this group of men to a product that Chicago can be proud of. We've literally rinsed and repeated that our whole entire life. So I don't have a lot of faith, but I like the prospects that we're looking at for head coach. I forget who it was, but I was just looking on Twitter before we came on. They posted, I think one of the Bears blogs or whatever. They posted one of their old articles from the last coaching search when they hired Flus, and some of the names that were there were like Jim Caldwell, the Saints, Dennis Allen. Who else? Leslie Frazier, and then Brian Dable, which I think a lot of Bears fans wanted Dable during that search. I mean, I think Giants fans are a little done with Dable.
Really?
I think, they're one of the worst teams this year, right? I think they wanted him to
I don't think he's been given a fair chance at all. He kind of came in there with, like you said, Daniel Jones, and they haven't had a shot to do anything outside. Right,
but he was like the hot OC, the hot offensive mind. He was with Josh Allen, but Josh Allen really hasn't missed a step since his departure. So really,
yeah.
And that leads us to some of these candidates, right? Like, how good are these candidates, or is the position and spot that they're in just that cush, right? that they have a premier talent at quarterback. They have a team and a roster that's really set up, and they're the ones kind of pushing buttons for sure, but they're propped up pretty good.
Which is always the case. You go into all these head coaching searches every single year, and the Bears, had to, reset the head coaching position, the head coaching spot a couple years ago. Now they're doing it again, but this happens every year, and always the hot names are the guys that are the OCs from the really good offenses. The Baltimore Ravens OCs, the Rams OCs, Matt Nagy. How many times is he going to be getting an opportunity just because he's the OC for Patrick Mahomes? So, yeah, that's the case every year, I think, and probably was the case with Dabble too.
Yeah, I mean,
think it's interesting they're not making any changes, the Giants, though, for to your point, having only won a couple games and looked as poor as they did. But yeah, there's some interesting names this year. Some people that maybe haven't been heard of, and then there's a couple like legacy coaches. Like you were talking about before with like Jim Caldwell as a name, like Pete Carroll's on this list.
Yep.
Which is really interesting. You're hearing like Rex Ryan is getting an interview with the Jets, or already had one. Like, that's crazy that some of these guys that you think were washed out or retired or were done are going to come back. And I guess it's worked out to an extent with Harbaugh and with Sean Payton and some of those guys that were, big names before and then came back and they're actually doing pretty well. So, why don't we start with Pete Carroll, just because I just brought him up. What do you think about that one? Because that's a Super Bowl winning head coach. I know we talked a little bit about Mike McCarthy probably before as a potential candidate, but it sounds like the Cowboys are going to retain him. But Pete Carroll is kind of that same ilk as Mike McCarthy, right? Where Super Bowl winning head coach and, a player's coach, I think, to an extent. I don't know if I'd consider Pete Carroll an offensive mind or a defensive mind, maybe more leaning on the defense. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah. Pete Carroll is definitely a defensive coach. It's like his history is defensive back when he was with the Bills, with the Vikings, defensive coordinator with the Jets. This is all in the 90s, defensive coordinator with the 49ers. And then he was the New England head coach. All in the 90s is where he had his NFL head coaching or coaching experience before going to USC and then Seattle. I like Pete Carroll. I've always liked him. The thing with me and that, everyone brings up is his age. He's 73 years old. I was also Nicholas Moriano, who a former of CHGO, but is a free agent right now, just kind of released an article he wrote on his WordPress. So if you follow him, go ahead and make sure you read that. But he was able to interview the running backs coach of the Bears. I forget his name, but I think it's Morton or something. He was featured on Hard Knocks quite a bit this year. And he worked with Carroll for about 10 years out in Seattle as well. And it was a really good interview of him asking kind of, what makes Pete Carroll tick? Like, would he be a good fit here? How does he lead men and all of these things? He just seems like somebody who's confident in his skin, to where the coach that we just let go, Eberflus, you could see that he was kind of in over his skis. He didn't really know how to respond and answer certain questions and felt like he was afraid to say the wrong thing. And it was almost more concerned about the post-game press conference, making sure he was able to zig and zag his way through that without making mistakes, than preparing for like the games. To where Pete Carroll, he just doesn't give a shit about any of that side. He's solely on the football side, and he's just comfortable. He's been doing this forever. He's been successful in it. He's won national championships in college. He's won Super Bowl in the NFL. They talk about like his philosophy that, he's kind of really good with leadership and motivation for the players. I wonder how true that is going to ring in this kind of quote unquote new era of player while he's 73 years old. That's my biggest hang up, but I like Pete Carroll. I'll be fine if he's my coach. I think it goes to show too that like being an NFL head coach is really, really hard. And that's why, like you said, like the Mike McCarthy's, the Pete Carrolls, the Caldwells, like this recycle approach of like taking a coach who's done it before and maybe giving him some time off and trying it again. Like it's a hard league to find success. And I kind of want to get your opinion on this. Like, what do you want in a head coach? I want somebody who's got head coaching experience. I know everybody is like, Ben Johnson's the hottest name. Everyone's just like, get Ben Johnson and then you're done. And, I hate winning the offseason. I hate doing the thing that everybody wants to do, like we did at the draft this offseason, where everyone was going crazy. We got Roma Dunze. We got Caleb, which is great, right? But like everyone's like, the draft was great. Bears crushed the offseason. We got Hard Knocks. That's awesome. Like we're all looking good. Flus has a new haircut. Like everything's good. And then the product sucks. You know what I mean? Like I'm tired of doing all that stuff. I'm tired of like, hey, everyone says get Ben Johnson and we're good. Well, I'm just a little cautious. I want maybe, and we can go and talk and get your take on Pete Carroll. But then the other candidate too, Mike Vrabel, someone who you know is going to have like a zero bullshit policy in the locker room and has a track record of doing this job before, to where you're not like kind of questioning who's this person telling me what to do, right? What kind of equity did Eberflus have with these players where he can say like, follow me because I've been here before, because he hasn't. So then you start getting players questioning the decisions, you lose the locker room.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Pete Carroll would be great. I think, you know, if you're going to get the Pete Carroll that was with Seattle, for sure. You
Does
know,
his
like
age
you said,
scare you?
and his age scares me a little bit, because I think the younger generations, I don't know, maybe they don't know so much about Pete Carroll. Maybe they're, you know, I don't know. He's just an old head. Mike Vrabel interests me a little bit more, you know, despite not having won a Super Bowl as a head coach. He's somebody with a lot of experience, you know, played in the NFL, played well. You know, I think that alone gets him a lot of locker room credit with everybody. You know,
got
on
3
top of the
Super Bowls
fact,
as a player for the Patriots.
yeah, on top of the fact that he's, you know, got a pretty good coaching record. I think, for given, you know, the roster that he had, I think in Tennessee, and what was the best quarterback that he worked with? Ryan Tannehill. I mean, I feel like he, you know, also hasn't been given a fair shot yet. Now, I think my prediction is he'll end up in New England just because of the history there and the fact that they also have a franchise, you know, young quarterback, and you know, they can kind of lean on him to fix their defense and work on their line and everything too. I just feel like that's just a match made in heaven. But I would love for him to be the coach of the Bears. But I do like the same, you know, as you. I want somebody with a little bit of experience, because it does scare me to do the, you know, head coach that doesn't have that NFL head coach experience. You know, I think back to Trestman was horrible. Matt Nagy, you know, we got one good year out of him, and then the shine wore off on that pretty quick. Despite him now getting other head coaching interviews, and maybe the second time around he's going to be better because he's had a little bit of experience too. But I just, you know, those kind of things scare me. And Ben Johnson could be a Kevin O'Connell or a Sean McVay, where they come in right off the bat. And Mike McDaniel, like, I don't even know. I think the jury's still out on Mike McDaniel, right? Everyone was trying to crown him after a year. This year was not good, and showed if he was missing a couple pieces that his whole plan is kind of in shambles.
Who's your number one pick? Who do you want to be the next Bears head coach?
I think for me, I would like Vrabel if I could pick.
Your number one would be a defensive minded head coach.
I don't really know if that's the part that matters as much. If he came in and got, you know, a good offensive coordinator, and I'm sure he would have somebody good in mind. But I think the Lions work so well. You know, everybody wants to look at them, but I think if you look at them, Dan Campbell's, I don't think he's this super stud offensive coordinator. You know, that's the Ben Johnson, right? It's like, Ben, here, you call the plays and take care of the offense. I'm going to focus on what needs to get done, you know, from a head coaching perspective. We got the defensive coordinator, but, you know, I mean, somebody like him, and I think of Vrabel is probably the closest guy in this cycle to that, if he can bring in a good offensive coordinator. I think Ben Johnson's really interesting, and I think I would be okay with, you know, them going that route as well. But I do think that's the one that is, like you said, it's the obvious answer. It's where I think they're going to go. I would say I'm like 75% that they're going to really go after Ben Johnson, despite them having a long list of names. And I think it makes a lot of sense, and he deserves a shot. He was the hot name last cycle. He's the hot name again this cycle. He's going to take a job, whether it's in Jacksonville, New England, or for the Bears. I think those are the three teams I'd expect him to land with. But I don't know. There's some uncertainty there, and there could be, you know, we get burned in a big way for sure when you try to run some of these plays that look fantastic. They look so good with the Lions. Amon-Ra catches the ball, pitches it back. Jameson takes it up the sideline. We don't have any of those players. We don't have any, like maybe DJ could be the Amon-Ra, but who's going to be, I don't know. I just, the Bears offense needs a lot of work for it. It's at that point where you can run those flashy plays and make those look good, in my opinion.
And I think something to be said about that and being able to do gadget plays is having control of your team. And I think that's what Dan Campbell does so well in Detroit, is that everybody's in lockstep with each other. They know what their identity is. They know that they're going into every single game prepared, that they are kind of the better team, and they have a better edge as well, and they're more competitive, right? And it just embodies their head coach. That guy's a psycho, right? In his like introductory press conference, he was talking about like taking kneecaps and fighting and scrapping, right? So, and then what he does is he takes all that macho attention, and then he allows the Ben Johnsons to kind of work in the shadows for a couple of years and really perfect his craft. And now he's the hot name because the offense has been, so prolific,
right?
But it's allowed to be prolific because every player knows what's expected of them. And that tone was set by Dan Campbell. So I agree with you that I don't think it really matters, but I'm going to also kind of contradict myself. I don't think it matters if the head coach is offensive or defensive. I think majority of Bears fans want offensive because of Caleb Williams. And those fans that don't want offensive, they're going to want the defensive coach because they view them as like the tone setters. The Mike Vrabels, right? The Pete Carrolls, the Legion of Boom, the people that are known to kind of set the tone in the locker room, set the expectations, lead a team, and then allow your kind of coordinators to go behind the scenes and do their gadgety and their play calling and let that be successful.
And I think that works. And I just want to say on that same point is I think that works with people like if I think of McVay, I think of Shanahan, and I think of Kevin O'Connell. And I think all three of those guys are able to be that offensive mind and set the tone. Like they're capable of that. So you need to find somebody that can do both of those. Those are the two most important pieces if you're going with an hot name offensive coordinator like that. Nagy clearly couldn't set the tone in the locker room. That was just not going to happen. And he might be a really good, and obviously he has looked really good with Kansas City. But I mean, you got to find somebody that can do both of those. And Ben Johnson, we can tell, is a really good offensive coordinator, offensive play caller. But can he set the tone like that? And I don't really know, because I feel like I have not seen enough of him talking, because like you said, Dan Campbell is the one doing all the talking there.
And he had a quick rise, right? Like it's not like Ben Johnson has been this coveted, offensive mind. He was in Miami for 6 years before Detroit. And those are two franchises. If you like kind of close your eyes, you're like, are those good franchises? Do you want people that come from that coaching tree? And you're like, no, those teams usually suck. When he got in Detroit, just 6 years ago, offensive quality control, a tight ends coach, passing game coordinator, which is, if you're following the Bears, that's where our interim Thomas Brown came from. He was our passing game coordinator, and then into offensive coordinator, right? So not quite a lot of, accountability, not quite a lot of control in those positions until he got to the OC 3 years ago. So 3 years as an offensive coordinator, you ready to step into a big market like Chicago and lead that team to success? Maybe he is. I'm not saying he's not. Like he could more than well be ready. But
it's not a lot of seasoning. But
not a lot of seasoning.
If you're looking at the whole body of his work, right, of his coaching career, starting in 2009, every year he's stepping it up, right? It's kind of a slow climb. He's graduate assistant. Then he's the tight ends coach, offensive assistant quarterbacks coach, tight ends coach, assistant wide receivers coach. So he's coached the tight ends, he's coached wide receivers, offensive assistant. Then he goes to the Lions, like you said, quality control, tight ends, passing game. Then he's finally the OC. Maybe came back knowing that his resume looks like this. He needs to stop somewhere for a couple years, really show that he can do this, and was in a cushy spot and still is, right, at this point. So I don't know. I think it's a good looking resume for sure.
It's a good resume. And then look at his product this year, the last 2 years. You're like, well, whoever's running that offense needs to have a team of their own, right?
Yeah.
And it's not exactly that transition. Like, it does not correlate like that. You don't just like, oh, he's good there, put him on another team. It should replicate itself, right? No, there's a lot of things that a head coach has to do that he doesn't do when he's an offensive coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not just solely focusing on scheming a game plan. You're also controlling the whole entire freaking team, making sure people are accountable, right? Upholding the standard. What is the standard? What are you going to be known for, known as? Can you lead? That's why I like Mike Vrabel, like you do. I don't think we'll get him. I think, like you said, he's going to stay out east. He's going to be in the Patriots organization there, especially how fast Kraft fired Gerard Mayo, right? That's his name.
Yeah. Yep.
After 1 year, because he knows Vrabel's ready to coach again. So I think that's a done deal. My guy that I like, that I know a lot of people hate, but I'm going to say if we don't get Vrabel, the guy that I would like to see is Cliff Kingsbury.
Really?
Boy, does that not make any sense, right?
He's another guy. He, to me, is like Matt Nagy, where had a little success, then it quickly went to shit, and then he goes back to college, finds a nice cushy spot there, gets his opportunity again, and is killing it. And you just don't know where you're going to get. I still feel like it's like a mystery box with
But again,
Cliff Kingsbury.
To me, it's a he's already gone through the process of a Ben Johnson and was a head coach and saw what that was like, had it fail miserably after finding some success. Don't forget now, right? They went to the playoffs in Arizona, started 11-6. I know a lot of people always comment that he falls off in the second half of the season. Everyone finds out his kind of scheme and his gimmicks, but he's got experience, right? He's been a head coach in the college ranks at Texas Tech. He's been a head coach in the NFL. And then he kind of left, and now he's back in the NFL with the Commanders. Jaden Daniels, it looks like he's the offensive rookie of the year. The quarterback looks like an absolute stud, and you got to attribute that a lot to his offensive coordinator, who's Cliff Kingsbury. And you think that he's probably learned a lot, right? He's got to have to learn a lot from getting fired from Arizona, right? What were all the missteps? What would you do different, right? And I don't know if Ben Johnson's there yet, where he would be able to see those things. Maybe he is, right? But I like Vrabel. I like Pete Carroll a lot. I do.
Really?
But his age scares me. 73 years old. But like, I'm just thinking of how confident Carroll would be in the position, and there would be no second guessing. He'd know exactly what to do. He would have a game plan. He'd have a blueprint. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how I've done it. Here's where I found success. Here's how I'm going to continue to find success. Right. And then I like Cliff. I think I like Vrabel as my 1, Cliff as my 2A, Pete as my 2B.
Interesting.
Because I'm afraid of Ben Johnson being the flavor of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And
I have that same.
I don't think he's strong enough.
I don't know about it. I don't know. And I liked Bill Belichick before he took that job in North Carolina, but it sounds like they didn't even want to interview him. And I feel like he's the type of guy, and maybe Pete Carroll's this way too, which is interesting because the Bears are going to talk to him, right? You have an interview and you're Pete Carroll, it's a done deal, right? I'm not going there for no reason. How many conversations is Pete Carroll going to have?
Yeah, you kind of
should he have? He's got his resume speaks for itself. You know what you're getting. He's about the same age as Belichick, a year older than Belichick. So, if North Carolina's taking a chance and Belichick's still coaching, why couldn't Pete Carroll? But yeah, I don't know. Some other names: Anthony Weaver, Miami Dolphins D coordinator.
No. Aaron Glenn, Detroit D coordinator. No.
Yeah.
You know what I think would be great?
Broncos D coordinator.
What? Here's what I want, Evan. You ready for this? I want, if it falls that way, right? I want Cliff Kingsbury, head coach, and then I want my defensive coordinator to be Robert Saleh. What do you think about that?
Oh my gosh.
Former Jets head coach. That guy's a maniac.
Don't go telling anybody that, all right? No,
Why?
I don't like. I think Saleh was a great defensive coordinator. Obviously, got that job when he was, based off of how he did with the 49ers. So,
yeah,
I know. I thought he was going to be a good coach, and honestly, I think he did a pretty good job. I think Rodgers just poisoned the
Aaron Rodgers
organization.
Yeah. It kind of wasn't his fault. It was Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Robert Saleh. Guy's been coaching since 2002, NFL coaching since 2005. Like you said, he was a 49ers DC Before that, linebackers coach in Jacksonville. Before that, defensive quality control during the Legion of Boom with Pete Carroll in 2011 to 2013. And then for the Texans before that. I mean, he's been a consultant for Green Bay this last year, right? Working with Matt LaFleur. And I think he's in the circuit this year interviewing for some jobs. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are bringing him in for an interview.
Man, yeah, that is an interesting coordinator. A little reunion with Pete Carroll and
maybe that's it. That's the marriage, right? Pete Carroll and Saleh. I think just Saleh would be Chicago would love him because the defense would be great, and he's a meathead. And we like it when our team's defenses are edgy, right? And we're badasses.
Yeah,
you'd be perfect.
All about it. I mean, Pete Carroll's
and then Pete Carroll retires when he gets older. He retires, and Saleh steps in as head coach after gaining more experience.
The story writes itself.
There it is.
Joe Brady's another hot name. Bills offensive coordinator.
No,
he's been around the league a little bit.
All those names, I'm like, no. Who the Giants OC Kafka, whatever his name is a former Northwestern quarterback. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't really get that one. I don't understand why he's getting requests. Yeah. Born in Chicago, played at St. Rita. Okay, so local guy, but the Giants offense, why would anyone want to? And then Arthur Smith is getting some interest, which I think is interesting too. The Falcons' former head coach goes to Pittsburgh for a year. Yeah. Brian Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator. What do you think about that one? That's another hot name. Vikings defense is pretty good. I think lately it's kind of burned down a little bit towards the end of the year here. And I don't know how far they're going to go in the playoffs, but it was a good looking defense throughout the year.
Good looking defense. I think his biggest thing that people are talking about is that he had such a bad relationship with Tua, and Tua's been pretty vocal that he was almost like verbally abusive towards him. So how much did he learn from that experience? How much did Flores was he able to reflect on kind of his missteps there? Because you need to make sure that Caleb Williams, he doesn't have a say, but you need to make sure that he's in the plans for the new head coach.
Yeah.
Right. That he's not just a piece, but that he's a focal point.
That's a good point. And then I think that's pretty much it. Kafka, Flores, Mike McCarthy, they requested and got declined. Todd Monken, Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. Like we said, Baltimore OC, I feel like every OC that they ever have is in the cycle every year. Greg Roman's name's always out there, and now he's with the Chargers. But Todd Monken, I think I'm not super excited about that one either. Thomas Brown, any interest in bringing Thomas Brown back?
As maybe an offensive coordinator.
As an OC?
Yeah.
You think so? I don't really have any interest
in
bringing him back.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
In any capacity.
I think you don't want to leave any of the stink. Get rid of the stink.
Well, I mean, on that same note, before we head out, what are your thoughts on them retaining Poles? And then Ryan Poles having a press conference today and not saying if he's been extended and how long he's been extended for.
Yeah, it's just typical Chicago sports, right? This when the Bulls did the same thing when like Billy Donovan got an extension that no one knew about. They always do this. It's something with like the Reinsdorfs and the McCaskies. It's just like these things happen behind closed doors and they don't release it. I'm sure he got an extension that no one knows about. I think they like him. I think he's done a good job of, gathering talent. Like this team was talented, but he totally had missteps. I mean, the guy never should have hired Matt Eberflus. That's a huge red flag. It's fireable, right? But they must believe in his approach. It's his fourth year on the job going into next year.
His fourth, yeah.
So, I mean, you don't want to continuously just keep it turning over and turning over and turning over. You want to have some stability.
That's what they're telling themselves, Dan.
That's what they're telling themselves.
That's what they've been saying for years, and that's why they kept Eberflus. That's why there was a holdover there. It was the stability and the hot, young, the new guy. There's a new guy in the building. They totally clean house. Then you're just stuck with McCaskey and Kevin Warren. Just those two guys making every decision. The whole building would be in shambles, I think. So
yeah, get Pauline in there, consult, help you out.
Yeah. Oh, he's done such a great job. We got to keep listening to that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I trust that they'll make the right decision? No,
No.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Kafka's going to be our head coach.
Kafka. Oh my God. Burn it down if it's Kafka. Well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully by the next time we talk, there's a little bit more clarity. But right now they're talking to, it sounds like 13 coaches at this point. It's probably going to go up even more. Seasons, playoffs haven't even started. So
yeah,
we'll see. But that's been our show today. Thanks again for joining us. For Dan Sloak, I'm Evan Bierman. You've been listening to the Domestic Draft Podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to rate the show. You can find us on Twitter at Domestic Draft, on Instagram at Domestic Draft Podcast. Our website is domesticdraft.com, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Just search up Domestic Draft and drop us a sub. Thanks again for listening. Cheers.
Cheers.